Hey everybody, it's GauntletX and welcome back to some more Magic Arena, and today we'll be playing one final Alchemy Premier Draft of Wilds of Eldraine. This is going to be a Premier Draft of Wilds of Eldraine, but one of the commons has been swapped out for an Alchemy Uncommon or Rare. I did say that last draft was going to be the final one, but today, right before my recording session, I saw that these were about to leave Arena, and I was like, you know what? Let's get one last draft in. So by the time this is uploaded, I think the Alchemy drafts will be off Arena, but I just wanted to play a little bit more with some of the cards we won't be able to play with in draft anymore in the future after this. So without further ado, let's finally get into our pack one, pick one, which is actually pretty easy here. I think these blue uncommons with the adventure abilities to destroy something like the 1 damage to a target or destroy a tapped creature are pretty solid, as is the Lord Skitter's Butcher for the flexibility on that card, but I have been very impressed by the Alchemy card here, the Dunbarrow Revivalist. Just up front, the stats on this are insane. A 2-mana 3/1 that puts a Wicked roll on the next creature you play, and that is not all, because it can also bargain something late in the game to pick up a creature from your graveyard and put it back in your hand. So it can be an even cheaper version of like a Gravedigger late game. So that card is pretty nuts, and we're going to start with that. For pack one, pick two, we have a bunch more just great options here. We have a couple premium commons with the Hopeful Vigil that works great with bargain and with bounce effects. The Hamlet Glutton that is a huge stabilizer for any green deck. And as for uncommons, I did play a deck with some Grow Old Togethers. That was a really fun card draw spell that also buffs your whole hand, so that's pretty cool. And then Taken by Nightmares is solid removal, a little expensive, but pretty dang solid. So my top two or top three picks here would just be Taken by Nightmares to stick to black, get an exile removal spell that's pretty good, or just scoop up that Hamlet Glutton and start moving on to black-green. I think 4 mana, instant speed, exile a creature is efficient enough removal to just stick to our main color for now. Dunbarrow Revivalist Taken by Nightmares to start it off. That way we are not hopping onto our second color quite yet. So I think that's a pretty reasonable pick there for that reasonable removal spell. Now we have Sweet Tooth Witch versus Hollow Scavenger or Red Tooth Vanguard. I think these are all pretty comparably powerful, so we can just take the on-color card again with the Sweet Tooth Witch. Could go for a little bit of fixing with Prophetic Prism if we want to be a slower, splashier deck. Or that's kind of it. I don't think it'd be right to take like a Picnic Ruiner here, even though that is a pretty strong card. It's kind of like a red, green, gold card. So it'd be better to just take a strong mono-colored card, or even if I'm going off-color, take a Scavenger or a Vanguard here. But we could just stick to black with the Sweet Tooth Witch and be pretty happy with that. For pack one, pick four, this will be a pretty difficult pick now because there's some really good stuff. So I think Cut-In is the best card in the pack by a little bit. It's very good in any aggressive deck, being able to clear out a blocker and buff your board. You're giving one of your creatures a Young Hero roll to keep getting bigger as it attacks. But Monstrous Rage is a super efficient combat trick that's very explosive, does a ton of extra damage, maybe wins that combat. There's also Rat Out on color, which is pretty good, and Ferocious Werefox out of green, which is quite solid. I think Werefox is probably behind these three, but I did want to mention it as just another great card in the pack. The pack is really strong. I think I'm going to take Cut-In here over Monstrous Rage, but I do think both these red cards are enough better than Rat Out to speculate on the second color there. And it's not quite going to pan out yet because we don't see a great follow-up in red. Gnawing Crescendo is definitely a good card to have one copy of once you've already established yourself as a deck that can produce a lot of rat tokens or get wide enough to use this as a finisher. But we are not committed enough to do that yet, so we're just going to take the Hopeless Nightmare on color and go from there. There's a second Cut-In, pick 6. Pretty decent. Really powerful stuff here again, between Cut-In and Hopeful Vigil still being in this pack. Werefox is also pretty good for like pick 6, but not quite as good as Cut-In and Vigil. Just some excellent stuff flying around the draft pod. Alright, pick 7, Minstrosity. Very happy to be in black in the draft pod. This is a 2 mana 3/1. When it dies, you get a food token. Doesn't read that exciting, but any of these creatures that leave something behind when they die or when they hit the board happen to be pretty good. Little weaker than the Dunbarrow Revivalist, but pretty similar in that it's a 2-mana 3/1 that gives us some other piece of bargain fodder. It just doesn't have the extra late game flexibility of being able to recur something, bring it back to our hand from grave. Now we have Grand Ballguest if I want more 2-mana aggressive creatures, or a Twisted Fealty if I want another kind of finisher here. And I think we are early enough to really take either, because we already have 2 2-mana creatures. We also already have 3 removal spells. I think Fealty is a little bit less replaceable. Like, there's only Twisted Fealty and Ariet's Tempting Apple for these kind of finishers that can get around like a massive blocker. Whereas for 2-mana creatures, there are several pretty good ones in red. The only really good common in black is the Minstrosity. But out of red, we could pick up those Grand Ballguests or like Ratcatcher Trainees later. And those would all be good. Take a Crystal Grotto, speculating towards maybe ending up splashing it all. And Harried Spearguard, definitely the pick here. 1-mana 1/1 haste that replaces itself when it dies, even if the thing that it replaces itself with can't block. It's pretty fine for an aggro deck. Just keeps getting damage in. And pick 12 Monstrous Rage. Red, black is the place to be in this draft pot. I am happy to have ended up where I am. And while we didn't get anything insane pack 1, with how late the cards that we did see went, I imagine if anything pretty solid is opened up in black or red, it could end up getting passed to us pretty late in these future packs. So for pack 2, pick 1, I'm just going to take the 1-mana 3/2. It's definitely got some downside to it where it turns itself into a 1/1 if it's the only creature on your board, but you can bargain away that cursed roll to make it a 3/2, or you can put the cursed roll onto a 1/1 like a Harried Spearguard or a Rat token to have this just have no downside. So I think Hexmage is an efficient enough little beat stick to take pick 1 here. Could also take the Hearth Elemental. I think this is a pretty great way to have a lot of card draw at the top end of your curve. Once you run out of things to do, you just stoke Genius, draw a couple cards, and slam down a 4 or 5. So really nice at the top of the curve, but Hexmage is a little more fun, a little more splashy, something you don't get to play with as often. And a really cool alchemy rare here, but it is a blue spell that we're pretty far away from playing at this point. Nothing good for black or red either, really, just like Wicked Visitor. I guess we take Cruel Somnophage, but that is just not going to be very big without actually actively milling somebody for it, so I guess either way we're rare drafting at this point, basically, but we might as well rare draft the on-colored card and maybe we find enough mill or like super cheap removal that we could try to do the Somnophage here. Pick 3 Torch the Tower is an excellent pickup. Super efficient removal spell without the bargain, and when you can bargain with it as well, it becomes even better. Clearing out 3 toughness cards and scrying. Now we have a Minstrosity versus a Totentans versus an Edgewall pack. Again, looks like certainly the color pair to be in for the draft pod. We've got 3 2-drop creatures. Technically, we've got a Somnophage as well. We've also got 2 2-drops. I think we can take a 3-mana or a 4-mana card here like Totentans or Edgewall pack. And I think Totentans has the highest potential upside, even if it requires the most work to get going. You want some other rats on the board, or you want some creatures trading off. Now we have a Feed the Cauldron, but I already have double cut in Taken by Nightmares Torch the Tower, so I don't think I want that versus a Grabby Giant, so I think it's just the Grabby Giant. If we have nothing else to do with our 2 mana at any point in the game, we can get a treasure token for later. And then on turn 4, we get a nice little 4/3 body that can be a card draw engine throughout the game as well. If we flood out at all, we just start sacking our lands to draw a card, so super fine card, super reasonable stuff there. I like Rat Out a decent bit. I also like Boundary Lands Ranger with some 4-power creatures or some young hero rolls to turn things into 4-power creatures, because then this can be a card draw engine as well. So Rat Out or Ranger it is. I'll go for the red out. I think red seemed insanely open, and black just seemed like open enough, you know? So I think we take the black card first and like wheel the red card. We probably get that Boundary Lands Ranger back if we got a Monstrous Rage pick 12. And if we don't get the Boundary Lands Ranger back, we'll get the Grabby Giant back. Little concerned here that my last pick just completely disappeared, so I don't know if I should reboot Arena right now. I'm just gonna wait, it'll give me an error if something bad happened. Yeah, I guess the card is just invisible, but we still got past our next pack, so that's good. Easy Monstrosity here. Gotta hit that critical mass of 2 drops, which is 5+, ideally more than 5, but 5 is like the minimum. So let's grab the Monstrosity over the Red Cap Thief, which I think is also a super good card. But Monstrosity, it'll be. Did I end up getting to play with any Alchemy cards yet? Yes, I've got a Dunbarrow Revivalist, but that's it. But there's only 1 Alchemy card per pack, so you're not usually going to get an insane amount. Take a Merry Bards now. I like this card decently at the top of the curve at 4 mana. A 3/2, you get a Young Hero roll on something else. That can sometimes get an attack in where you couldn't previously. Like if your opponent has a 4 toughness blocker, you've got one of your 3/1s on board, like a Dunbarrow Revivalist or Monstrosity, just putting that hero roll onto it. Getting in can be good. And yeah, red is wide open because we get that Hearth Elemental at the top of the curve now. And nothing here. I'll rare draft an uncommon. I'll take a Gingerbrute. With enough Young Hero rolls, Gingerbrute becomes pretty good because you make an unblockable creature that buffs itself up to 4 power over time, which is insane. Edgewall pack, pick 12. Again, I think literally every good red card that we've seen has come back. We just haven't seen a lot, you know? Like not a lot of great red has been opened generally. Although I guess we didn't wheel the Grabby Giant or the 2 mana 2/2 there, but we still got the pack back. We are getting some really good red stuff to come really late. Now here, the red cards are so good that there's no way we're getting the other one back. I'm going to take the Gutter Dweller here. 4 mana 3/3 menace, comes with 2 1/1 rats. That's already insane. But then at your upkeep, it turns into a card draw engine, letting you sack a rat to put a counter on it and draw another card, and you just go wild with this thing. Army in a can, card draw engine, stuff like that. Recruiter is also completely nuts. It's another army in a can if you can get the treasure token to use train troops, but it also just gets so much damage in when you play it and give your whole board +1/+0, so yeah, that was an insane choice. Gutter Dweller or Recruiter, and whichever one we didn't take there was just not going to wheel at all, so I'm going to take the Gutter Dweller. I think it's a little higher upside, but now I guess we'll just take Recruiter because it's still here, and maybe we wheel a Ratcatcher trainee. If not that, Tattered Ratter should definitely wheel, so we'll get a 2-drop out of this pack as well. Now we've got a Rotisserie Elemental competing with a Witchstalker Frenzy. The Rotisserie Elemental, a 1-drop that can turn into a little card draw spell. Not a card draw engine, it only draws the cards 1 time, but it's pretty cute when you do that. It is kind of high variance where it's really good in your opening hand and pretty bad as a top deck later, because a 1/1 menace is just going to get blocked and killed if you draw it on turn 5 or 6. So I think I'm just going to go Witchstalker Frenzy. I'm just going to go for the super efficient removal over that, even though we've got a decent amount of non-creature spells. We can always swap them out and just make them better. And now we'll just have another cut-in. Speaking of, we probably end up just not playing Taken by Nightmares at this point. Probably not Dragon Mantle, maybe not even Hopeless Nightmare, because we don't have a lot of bargain. But it's also just a good way to guarantee a couple points of damage early. Another Monstrosity would be pretty groovy with the Imidane's Recruiter curve. We've got a lot of 4-drops, but Outfitted Jouster is real big. It's essentially a 4 mana 6/6 trample when you play it. If damage is dealt to it, instead you prevent the damage and sacrifice one of these equipments. So a 4 mana 6/6 trample. First time it takes damage, it drops down to a 4/4. This is so crazy, and it's our last alchemy draft. I'm gonna play around with the alchemy nonsense card right there. Try it out, and now we can just have a 4th cut in, or a 2nd fealty, or a Callous Sellsword, so I might be able to fealty something and sacrifice it to the Sellsword, which is cute. This is so wild. Any of these 3 cards would be insane. Sure, we'll just take a 4th cut-in. So if I weren't trying to do like fun alchemy stuff, if we just prioritized another monstrosity there and just loaded our deck with infinite 2-drops with low toughness, then we could just be all in on turn 4 cut-in every game at this point, which would be wild. This pack's unfortunately not great. I'll actually take a Tabby for more 1/2 mana cards that can get young hero rolls. Here's a Gingerbrute with the 4 cut-in. We've got a lot of 4-drops, a lot of young hero rolls, so I'd rather have Gingerbrute than Edgewall Pack. Tattered Redder is good too, but I think the quadruple cut-in kind of calls for a Gingerbrute there. Now we get a Grand Ballgast, pick 9. Now we do get the Tattered Redder, pick 10, but we didn't get the little rat-producing dork, which is a little sad. But still, this is a wild deck. A wild, wild deck with a lot of choices how we want to swap things out. God, our 4-drop slot is so good because there's cut-ins there at 4 mana too. Alright. Well, this is going to be insane. I know that for sure. Well, let's see exactly how crazy it can be. We do have a 1 of Imidane's Recruiter. So I could throw in a Crystal Grotto for that off-chance Recruiter. I'm definitely not just putting a Plains in here, because Recruiter is still a super reasonable card just off the red mana. But this way, there's not just a single way to train troops. It's not just one Red Cap Thief. Now there's one Red Cap Thief, one Crystal Grotto. I think that's fine. We don't have an insane amount of double red or double black cards, so we can make our mana base a tiny bit worse and throw in a Crystal Grotto. Although, I don't know, I was going to say Crystal Grotto is mostly just filtering for the white mana, but if we put a Crystal Grotto in over a Plains, then it makes it so any hand that has, you know, double Mountain Crystal Grotto or double Swamp Crystal Grotto is still a keepable hand, whereas if this were Plains instead, then this wouldn't help with our main colors at all. So I think I'm gonna Crystal Grotto over Plains, but I could see why there'd be a decent argument for just running the straight up Plains there, since most of the time I'm only just trying to get the white mana for Recruiter. That's the only off-color card I'm trying to find. Alright, I don't think I'm playing Cruel Somnophage, even though I've got the Grotto now to maybe cast some Evanescence in here. Can't wake up. Wake me up inside. Wicked Visitor could be okay with the amount of young hero rolls, but it's never going to be exciting. Again, Tabby's pretty similar. Tons of stuff at 4 mana, so probably drop the Grabby Giant Mary Bards. Still have 4 cut-ins for young hero rolls. We have to cut so many cards here. Cut a land. Maybe we're aggressive enough to just not even really need top-end card draw like Hearth Elemental. 3-for-1 kind of stuff. What's the creature non-creature here? We're at 17 creatures. Maybe we drop a rat out. Crescendo might be an argument. The quality's so high. And there's there's great synergy going on with like 3 1-mana 1/1s to go with the Spiteful Hexmage, so we can put just a Curse Roll on one of those. And those are all also excellent with cut-in. We've got so many great places to put cut-in if we just keep all these 1s and 2s. 1s, 2s, and 3s, really. Incredibly efficient removal with Torch the Tower, Witchstalker Frenzy. Yeah, I think I cut Rat out, Hopeless Nightmare. The only bargain I really have is Torch the Tower, and the card's already solid without. It's like a drop 9 Crescendo and use Fealty as like the finisher-y kind of card, while still having just a great aggressive curve to win games without like one single-handed finisher kind of thing like Crescendo. And we also don't have as much rat production as you usually do in this kind of color pair. None of our cheap cards are actually putting 2 creatures on the board. It's not till 4 mana. We have 1 Edgewall Pack, 1 Red Cap. Yeah, we can cut Crescendo, I think. And then I guess I could cut Hearth Elemental as well. And this would be the 16 land aggro deck here. Witchstalker Frenzy, probably like 2 mana. We can attack with 2 creatures really easily. Yeah, this deck is wild. Some breakneck speeds here. Could definitely see cutting the outfitted Jouster, but gotta play with these spicy alchemy things. This could have been like the mono red draft pod, like we just Dragon Mantle some Ginger Brutes up. I could still do that, and we just cut top end for it. I'd have to cut both of these to put in 1 Dragon Mantle, because we're still 1 cut away from a 40 card deck. Do we have any other knights, I wonder? Or here, this will tell me. We have 1 other knight in this deck? Who's a knight? Oh, Imedane's Recruiter? Okay, so with only 1 other knight in the deck, if our Jouster just gets removal spelled, then we have a 3 mana to move around equipment and a 4 mana to move around equipment sitting on the board. That's still probably solid, because we run out of things to do, and all of a sudden we're making a rat, like a 5/5 trample with 2 different equipments. I'm gonna play the Jouster. It's our final alchemy draft. Let's play with all these alchemy cards. Let's just cut the Hearth Elemental and run the deck as we've cut it here. Maybe we're low enough on rats that Tattered Ratter doesn't really do anything, but it's still a 2 mana 2/2 on curve. But that's another thing I could swap around. 16 creatures here. Little low on creatures, but I could Dragon Mantle it up with the double Ginger Brute, because it's cute. Or we could just put the non-crescendo in for a finisher. Maybe Wicked Visitor's just straight up better than Tattered Ratter, because we only have like 3 rat makers. Got an Edgewall Pack, a Red Cap Gutter Dweller, and then occasionally Totentan's Sword accounts, Spearguard Sword accounts. Whereas with Wicked Visitor, we have a Curse roll from Hexmage. We have a Monster roll from Monstrous Rage. We have a Wicked roll from Revivalist. We have a Wicked roll from Fealty. And we have 4 Young Hero rolls from 4 cut-ins. That's 8 rolls. I think Wicked Visitor actually triggers more often than Tattered Ratter, if we just want a 2 mana 2/2 to keep the 2-drop count high. So yeah, we'll do that for the final swap. Lots of other places we could take this, because we have so many quality cards that we got out of this draft pod, but I'm pretty happy with calling it a deck here. Alright, here's a look at the final deck list for today. We are on a red-black aggro deck with just a lot of premium removal spells to really buff the creatures throughout the curve. So great aggressive curve of creatures with 4 1-drops, a Spiteful Hexmage, a Spearguard, and double Gingerbrute. So a lot of those having haste, getting some quick damage in. Bunch of 2 mana 3/1s like the Dunbarrow Revivalist, the Monstrosities, a Wicked Visitor, and a Grand Ballgast for some 2 mana 2/2s. At 3 mana, we have some cards to trigger Celebration for the Grand Ballgast, the Sweet Tooth Witch, and the Red Cap Thief, as well as the MVP Imedane's Recruiter, one of the best uncommons, well, the best uncommon in the format, and a Totentanz, which is pretty nice in the color pair. And to top it all off, we have some go-wide cards like Edgewall Pack, giving us a 3/3 Menace and a 1/1 Rat, Red Cap Gutter Dweller, giving us a 3/3 Menace and 2 1/1 Rats, and a card draw engine, and Outfitted Jouster, giving us basically a 6/6 Trample, and if that 6/6 Trample dies, then it still leaves behind some equipment to move around to our other creatures. So really great curve of creatures and excellent removal to back them up. As we said, 4 copies of Cut In to clear out a blocker and get extra damage in. This is going to be a huge card for this deck. But we also have the Torch the Tower to clear out cheap creatures and the Witch Stalker Frenzy for super efficient removal. Then we've got the big combat trick of Monstrous Rage to get a bunch of extra damage in, and the Twisted Fealty to finish our opponent off even if they get something on board that's too big for all our little burn spells to kill. So real aggro red-black deck today. Looks like a super spicy one, and I'm very excited to see how it does. So without further ado, let's just head into the gameplay and see how it does. Here we are for game 1 on the draw. Definitely lower on creatures than we want to be, but I think with both the colors available, with several solid removal spells in the hand, it is still going to be a keep. I'm actually just going to Crystal Grotto turn 1, see if we can help set up some good draws, and we do find an outfitted Jouster, so definitely playing a much slower game plan than intended, but with enough powerful cards, I think that's going to be fine. Our opponent starts off with a Red Tooth Vanguard on turn 2, so they're going to get in for damage here, getting a 3-1 Trampler down that early. Followed up with a 4-2 on turn 3, and that is not good for us. Here's Totentanz the Swarm Piper. And there's the Cooped Up, super aggressive hand from our opponent, which is going to be potentially disastrous for us if they have another removal spell to clear out the Jouster now. So this is a 6/6 Trampler. When it's dealt damage, we prevent that damage and sack an equipment instead. So I can block the Outrider and just sack an equipment instead of losing the Jouster. So they just don't attack in, which is great. This is where we can definitely try to stabilize and just use our stronger cards to win the game here. So let's drop a Gingerbrute. I think it'd be reasonable to trade Gingerbrute. On attacks here. So I'm at 10. I guess I wouldn't want to trade it in the Vanguard. And if I'm going to cut it, I'm going to cut in the Outrider anyway, since that one can't come back. Yeah. So we're probably not attacking with Gingerbrute this turn. And at 10 life, I mean, I deal 6 to them if I attack. They deal 3 on the crackback. I think I can afford to attack. So I'm also threatening to kill the Vanguard with a 1/1 blocker. So they might not want to attack without a trick of some kind. There's a Spellscorn Coven. The Fealty can get a lot of extra damage here, so I think I'm keeping that and discarding the Witch. Ooh. I think they're just dead because of Fealty now. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11? 11 is not lethal. Since I drew Witch Stalker Frenzy, though, I can Fealty the Vanguard, hit for 10, 11, 12 by frenzying the Coven before blocks. Yeah, frenzy the Coven and this is lethal. There we go. Excellent draw there, but I think we were in a solid position even without lethaling them that exact turn. But yeah, huge stuff from that Witch Stalker Frenzy. Huge stuff from just a 4-mana 6/6 Trample as well. Just block that early aggro from our opponent and turn things right around to just killing them in only a couple swings with our other board. So, really nice stuff as we head into game 2. Alright, here we are for game 2, and we can kind of pretend this was just a Mold of 6 here, honestly, and just start with a 6-card hand of Grand Ballgast double cut-in. I think that's fine. Find a Redcap Thief to immediately trigger the Grand Ballgast and let us cast one of our black spells. later in the game. Playing against turn 1 Utopia Sprawl, it's definitely a thing. There's the Sweet Tooth Witch. Turn 2 from our opponent. We do draw into the black source, which is wonderful. Alright, trade the Grand Ballguest into the Sweet Tooth Witch, get that out of the way for the rest of our board. Playing against green, blue, and black. Likely not a very good matchup for us, because they should have some big ways to help stabilize, like Hamlet Gluttons and stuff. Beanstalk Worms I'm not worried about at all, since they died at cut-in. And Greta I am also not worried about particularly much. So, let's just kill Greta before she can do anything. Even though I could try to save the cut-in to get a Young Hero roll on Minstrosity, because the Young Hero roll is much better on Minstrosity than on the Red Cap Thief. But now I can just kill Greta, hit for 3. Next turn they tap out for Beanstalk Worm. I play Minstrosity and cut in that as well. Well, that changes things pretty heavily. Because I really wanted... God dang it. I really wanted to play Minstrosity and cut in this turn to put a Young Hero roll on the Minstrosity, but in order to do that I sack my treasure and then I'm not casting Train Troops off of Recruiter. Could still be worth it. But I should probably just train troops now, honestly. But then they're going to have mana up when I try to cut in the worm, and that might end badly. I think they're likely to have a lot of ways to stabilize, plus with the double food, so I should try to get all the creatures that I can out of these cards. Get the maximum stat line possible. Hold on to this mountain in case of a Spellscorn Coven or a Hopeless Nightmare here. Oh my god. There's the Gruff Triplets. The Oops I Win has arrived. But I have beat more Gruff Triplets than I've lost to somehow. Highly doubt this is that situation though. They're at 16 with 2 food token. 2 food tokens behind this Gruff Triplets. So our best bet now is probably to like just draw into a fealty after we make one of their Gruff Triplets gigantic. Gruff Triplets. However you say it. Take 8 damage here. Oh, if anybody's wondering, by the way, I played the land last turn, even though they could have discard spells, so I would have access to eating the food or throwing the food right now if I need to. Like if I think throwing the food is better and I also want to trade Witch off into something, then I need that 2 mana right now. I have no idea how we're getting there here. I don't think we are. They're at like 22 right now off the double food. It's a lot of cut-ins. Is a lot of cut-ins. But if I cut into triplets, the other one's a 6/6 on blocks. And they attack in for 12 with trample. I guess I'll have one Vigilant blocker left. If I attack with 3 power creatures and they block with 1 triplets, I can cut in the other one, and then they're down to a single 12/12 triplets, but a single 12/12 triplet still just annihilates me. If I cut in one right now, they only have 1 blocker up, and I can deal 8 damage, but against somebody who's at essentially 22, that's nowhere near enough, and then I'm not holding anything up on counterattack. We just Monstrosity and pass? Probably. Oh lord. And then here's the 2-for-1 removal spell adventure creature of the Gingerbread Hunter. Now they just have a trick to ruin my day. Or they have Graveyard Recursion. If they have neither, then they have given us an out here. Alright, Tenants is not horrible. Still bringing them down to just 1 triplets left, so that if we draw into, like, Fealty, then I could, like, get a huge attack in. Still not nearly enough to find, like, lethal or anything here. Alright, there's a Gingerbread Hunter. Okay, so we're at 8. I don't have the mana to play an Imidane's Recruiter and a Cut-In. I do have the mana to play a Cut-In and eat a food, which is just barely enough to live. I would need to eat a food to be at 11 so I can just take the 9. And also cut in one of their creatures. Cut in the Beanstalk Worm here. I think it's better to just cut in Beanstalk Worm. But I could technically attack with my Vigilant Knight and then cut in the Gingerbread Hunter post-combat, but I'd be spending the Knight and the cut in to kill that, where I can just kill Beanstalk Worm with only cut in here, which would make it so I can try to double block the Gingerbread Hunter and kill it next turn. So we're going to do that. Better to try to double block and kill Gingerbread Hunter than only have a 3/4 left against their 5/4. Oh, Lord Almighty. You got me. Well, the positive win rate against Gruff Triplets was not likely to last long, and that game certainly gave us a loss against it. So we are 1-1 heading into game 3. Here we are now for game number 3. We got a turn 2 Monstrosity. We got a cheap little Torch the Tower, a Monstrous Rage for it, and a bunch of cut-ins. We are on the draw here, so we're not going to be full steam rolling, but we're going to be doing solid stuff. With, like, infinite copies of cut-in here, I'm just going to get the Torch the Tower out of the way on the 2-mana 2/2, because we definitely want to clear a path for Monstrosity. Swine Rebellion, really nice card. It's kind of like a divination where you draw 2 cards, but it puts 1 onto the board immediately and 1 into your hand, so it's really good value. Kind of like a 3 mana 2/3 that draws you a card when it hits the board, which is pretty gross. I choose the first little pig, though. Expecting to see the second little pig on the board, the 2/3 that can get the flying. But I guess they don't want to trade the 2/3 into the Minstrosity, but they'd be okay with trading it. Trading the first little pig into the Minstrosity, so that's probably what that is. I guess with Totentans on board, the trade gets more reasonable, where we'd get a rat back out of it. But I still want to see if I can keep the Minstrosity around and get a young hero roll onto it. Because if I can do that, that'll be awesome. Young hero rolls on your 1 toughness creatures can give them tons of counters throughout the course of the game. They're just going to hold 4 mana up here. Well, I guess we'll see what it is. We just cut in the pig and see what their response is. They did conjure another pig in their hand, right? Conjure 2 cards of your choice from the 3 pig spellbook. 1 in the hand, 1 on the battle. Yeah, there's a pig in their hand. There's a 2 mana 2/2 or a 2 mana 2/3 in their hand here. Stroke of Midnight? My Minstrosity? That is super fine. I don't have a young hero roll on it anymore, but I still got a rat back out of it and a 1/1 back out of it from the Stroke of Midnight. So that is super, super fine with me. My cut-in still resolves. We get rid of their probably best removal spell. Although Curse looks arguably better here. But now I've still got my second cut-in, and now they just have 2 cards in hand, nothing on board. Probably don't need to be making the best blockers ever in our position. So I'm going to put the young hero roll onto the rat, so if they want to kill our best attacker, we still have a slightly better creature left behind, that 1/1 there. Yep, and there's Fawn's Bane Troll. Opponent is just up there with that card quality here. 2 for 1, removal, and now a 2 for 1 removal creature. And yeah, there it is, kill the rat instead of a 1/1. Monstrous Rage is +3/+1, so I can Monstrous Rage to trade into the troll, so let's offer that. Basically just trading my Monstrous Rage into the troll, because the rat's not really a full card, the human token's not really a full card, and now we just joust it up. 4 mana 6/6 trample and go. There's our own super high card quality. Yeah, I mean, each player has played Insanity. Look at this graveyard. What a deck. But our opponent's done crazy stuff too. The Swine Rebellion being the really cool part, but solid Curse the Werefox. Fawn's Bane Troll here. I guess these pigs technically came out of the Rebellion, but that second little pig still spicy. There's a Feed the Cauldron, that's all they've got in hand, which can't kill an Outfitted Jouster, because that's a 4 mana creature. So we just jam in for 6, they've got no cards in hand, then we can Revivalist, sacking a food, to pick up a Totentans, replay him as a 3/4, because it'll have a Wicked roll on it. Should be super gross. Then even if they board wipe us, we get some rat tokens left behind. And if they don't, then they're just pretty dead here. And that will be the case. We are now 2-1 heading into round 4. Here we are for game number 4 on the draw again. You get to Crystal Grotto turn 1 here. Look for a mountain to play this on 3, this on 4. We find a Torch the Tower, which I think is worth keeping, even if we have to play off curve now. Because we don't have any interaction here. Our opponent starts with their own Harried Spearguard. Let's drop a Minstrosity. There's a rat out for the Minstrosity. Pretty annoying. Lord Skitter's Butcher to sack the rat, draw a card. They don't sack the rat though. They're just going to go wider, which means they likely have the +2/+0 to everybody, and they are just going to steamroll here. How worth it is it to find another red source? It might be worth stacking the food to a Torch the Tower to kill the Butcher and scry one. We're just holding up the Torch the Tower here. Yeah. 4th mana, Goblin Bombardment. Oh my god. Goblin Bombardment, insane bomb in the rat decks. Turns all of your rat tokens into 1 damage to any target at instant speed. Cry the 3rd swamp away, looking for the 1st mountain. We do have 8 mountains and 7 swamps in this deck, so 4 swamps before 1 mountain is unfortunately quite unlikely. Now we just dropped Totentans. I guess I could drop 2 blockers here, but they're both 1 toughness is the problem with that Goblin Bombardment. So I think I dropped Totentans because of Goblin Bombardment. Candy Grapple still in hand for our opponent. Land per turn. There's Hearth Elemental as the last card for the 3-for-1. The draw 2 and still have a 4/5 in hand. There is the mountain. Outfitted Jouster is actually just horrible against Goblin Bombardment because they can just sack 2 rats and kill both the equipment. Make it a 2/2. That would still kill both the rats at least. So it is still a thing. But with a 4/5 coming up from our opponent that we can't kill with a cut-in, I almost feel like I need to save the Jouster to try to block that. But they've got a Spear Guard too, that's multiple. Just can't get through this bombardment. Yep, and here goes the bombardment. Which is Vanity off the top, why not? I guess that could have been one of the 3 draws from Hearth Elemental, we just didn't have any creatures left last turn. Got a Godric as well. I don't think things could be going any worse here. Aggressive mirror match. We miss out on a red source for a little while that slows us down, and we're most importantly on the draw in the mirror match. Yeah, I mean, it's unwinnable now. They've got 4 damage on board with bombardment. So if I try to cut and I'm tapped out at eating the food and they just sack all 4 creatures and kill me. If I don't cut and I'm just dying to Godric in the sky. I can't play anything and still have mana to eat the food, which means that the only way that I don't die in the sky is by not eating any food, which means they just hit me for 4 in the sky, and then I eat a food, go to 3, and they just sack 4 creatures. We're immensely dead, no matter what we play. That was disgusting. A lot went wrong there. One of them just being our opponent having an insane hand. Like, they had to have just drawn the highest quality cards in their deck, unless red-black was the most open thing in the universe in their draft pod. Butcher, Elemental, Spearguard, Grapple, Rat Out, the Goblin Bombardment, the kind of S tier rare you do not see often in the red-black decks, since it is an Enchanted Tales rare. And the Godric as well for that flying haste damage in the end. Really high quality cards drawn throughout the game from our opponent. They obviously have a pretty great deck, but I think even for a great deck, that was an insane draw, and it lined up horribly for us. We were on the draw, which is terrible in the mirror match. We had 3-1s against Rat Outs, and then they got the Goblin Bombardment with 3-1s and 1-1s on our board, which just nullifies the vast majority of our deck. So gross stuff. Gross stuff. And things just line up to be a very unwinnable matchup, and we are 2-2 heading into game 5. Here we are now for game number 5. How does this work when you bargain with it? I don't know if I can bargain with the Revivalist without a creature engrave, but I'm going to try. I think you can. Yeah, it just says you may sack an artifact, enchantment, or token as you cast it. So I'm pretty sure I can bargain with it even without a card engrave. Ooh, I get to scry as well. Find a 4th land. Yeah, I have double cut in here. Let's keep the 4th land. Alright. 1 mana 3/2 into 2 mana 3/1 that buffs the next creature I play. Seems like a decent curve. Seems like a decent curve, especially with some cut-ins coming up to turn the 3/1 into maybe a 4/2. There's a Monstrosity from our opponent. Can send in the Hexmage and Frenzy the Monstrosity. Keep the path clear here. Yep, and then just start cutting in next turn. There's a Fairy Dream Thief for another 1/1. Grand Ballgust is the draw. Don't love cutting in a 1/1. So maybe we are just playing the Ballgust here. Alright. Try to clear out both with our 3/2. And we do. There's a first little pig. And we'll cut in on that. Put the roll onto the Revivalist. Hit for 7 damage here. They are down to 7. There's a bakery raid from a hollow scavenger to get another food token. So you can just try to eat a bunch of food to live, but now we've drawn into a twisted fealty, so it should be astronomically difficult to stay alive much longer than this. Cut-in and fealty are two very good ways to try to find lethal. There's an Agatha's Champion to fight the Ball Guest. But now we can cut in or fealty and find the kill. So let's do the fealty. And jam in for 10, and that is game. We are 3-2 now, headed into round number 6. Here we are for game number 6, on the draw again. A lot of being on the draw today. We've got Ball Guest into Sweet Tooth Witch with plenty of interaction after that, which is excellent. Our opponent is on the play with a Raging Battle Mouse turn 2 though, which means they could easily play 2 2-drops on turn 3 with that cost reduction and just go wild, or a Torch the Tower and a 2-drop or a 3-drop. Well, luckily no follow-up spell to the Torch the Tower there to really get there off the Battle Mouse. Yeah, let's be mana efficient. We'll drop the Sweet Tooth Witch. And I'm still fine with trading Sweet Tooth Witch into Battle Mouse. There's an accident-prone apprentice, and now they can cast a 2-mana spell, but a free Candy Trail it is. 0-mana Candy Trail. Alright, not bad. Not bad at all. Now the Battle Mouse gets to attack as a 3-2, but we'll just trade 3-2s if they want to do that. They do not want to do that. They're going to keep their potential Mana Dork. So now let's cut in the Accident-Prone Apprentice before it gets too big, because it'll keep getting permanent buffs as they cast non-creature spells. And then honestly, let's jam in with the Witch as a 4-3. We hit for 4, we take 3 on the crackback, so that's a good trade for us. They'll deal less damage to us than we're doing to them. Well, Witch's Mark means we'll deal 4 to them, and then they'll deal 4 to us if they trigger Celebration. Alright, Dragon Mantle onto the Battle Mouse, trigger that Celebration, get in for 4. Alright, and now, now I'm really happy to kill the Battle Mouse. I was going to say, now I'm happy to kill the Battle Mouse with one of these removal spells, as it's their only creature, but now I drew a Torch the Tower, where I can keep my Witchstalker Frenzy for something else still and do this. Get the free bargain, because the Witch is up to 4 toughness now, so the young hero roll is doing literally nothing anyway. With opponent down to 11, I'm going to keep the Ginger Brute. Even though I don't have a way to put a young hero roll onto it, I think still having another hasting threat can help. So there's a Crystal Grotto for our opponent to scry a little bit. And Imidane's Recruiter for a couple 2-2 Vigilant blockers. So theoretically, I just kill them here, right? Because I fealty one of these and kill the other one with Witchstalker Frenzy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're like mega dead here. Yeah, this is well over lethal. Such explosive turns with these spells. It's absolutely wild, and that's going to push us up to 4-2 now. No matter what, going to be a positive win rate out of this draft. So we should end up at the worst about where we started in the Mythic ranks, and balance it out with basically breaking even on gems here. So not a bad draft at all, whatever happens from here, but hopefully we can win a couple more, maybe get a little higher in those Mythic ranks, maybe get a little more gems back. We'll see how it all pans out as we head into round number 7. Here we are on the play for game number 7. Get that Crystal Grotto scry. 2 creatures in the hand, double cut in worth it? Sure. If I miss land drop 4, we could have a little bit of an issue, but I'm just going to be playing another 2-drop on turn 3, I think. So we see red from our opponent. I think I'm cool to Monstrosity. If they played a Swamp turn 1, I think I'd rather play Grand Ballgust to play around Rat Out, but if they play the Mountain turn 1, then their removal that's really good against 1 toughness cards is a 3 mana spell. Flick a Coin is what can really destroy the Monstrosity here. Ooh, and now we can play around Flick a Coin with Monstrous Rage? I guess I don't actually have enough red sources to do that. Since Crystal Grotto is not a natural red source. Honestly, I probably just shouldn't be... Ooh, I was going to say, I probably just shouldn't be playing Crystal Grotto. Because it was a big hindrance in one of our losses. And even this game, it stopped us from playing Grand Ballgust and Monstrous Rage. And the odds of hitting it when we have the Immodane's Recruiter in hand are pretty low. There's a much more real cost to running a Crystal Grotto or a Plains than there would be, like, an Evolving Wilds or something. I guess not Evolving Wilds, an Edgewall in. And we've gotten got by that cost a lot. Right, because just having a 2/2 on this board alongside that Monstrosity would have meant 2 more damage there. They'd be down to 12. Our second loss could have gone a lot differently. We would have cast our spells much earlier. I'm going to swap out this Crystal Grotto. It's been really bad. Swap it for another mountain. So there's Red Cap Thief from our opponent. Okay. Witchstalker Frenzy the Thief. Poke for 2. The reason that I'm so willing to do that is that I have 3 cut-ins. So we know what we're casting on their next creatures, and we need more mana for that. That is not more mana, which is quite bad for me. I might need mana badly enough to Twisted Fealty here just to draw a card, discard a card. Discard this Wicked Visitor. Poke them for 5. I don't know. I'm kind of desperate. I'm gonna do it. That's fine. Because it means they don't get to keep the counter on Messenger. If they just let it resolve, I would have been putting a counter on their Messenger when I attacked, so it would have been a 3/5 by the time it attacked on their turn. But now it's just going to be a 1/3 again. So that's perfectly fine. Slow things down, give me a little bit more time to draw into the 4th land. Scrying the second cut into the top has not panned out well, because now we've just drawn a 3rd, still looking for the 4th land. There it is. But now I have no creatures on board to put the young hero roll onto. Feels like even without a creature on board, I need to just kill the Messenger here. Get rid of their card draw engine while they're tapped out. With 2 more cut-in. I still have enough. I still have as many cut-ins as I have creatures. So I can still get a roll onto both of these. Well, there's another way to draw cards, which is Mark. Discard a land, draw 2. Take 4 from the familiar, and we are down to 16. There's a Hearth Elemental. That's a very big deal. Because it is very big. Cannot clear that out with a cut-in. if I play any of my creatures, I'm going to block nothing next turn, so I take 7 minimum. Unless I chump block. Which can't be right, so we just gotta kill Familiar. And take 4. I guess 5 because the Wicked roll. Ooh, please stop drum gas. Alright. Did not find an aggressive enough hand here, and they have stabilized hard. Now they're going to kill us with some 4/5s and 4/6s that we can't really deal with. Looks like the end of our draft run today. Well, oh, nope, because Crystal Grotto. Wow. Alright, I was going to say, well, at least now I can put 5 power on the board and double block Hearth Elemental. But no, we get got hard by Crystal Grotto here. But I guess I was going to swap it out for another mountain, in which case I still would not be able to play 5 power worth of creatures this turn. But yeah, if it were like a natural black source here, then this turn I could go 3/1 and 2/2, double block trade into Hearth Elemental. If it were a natural red source early this game, we would have replayed, well, we would have played a Grand Ballgast alongside our other play earlier. Yeah. Well, I guess we're just playing a Monstrosity and eating a food. To be mana efficient and get 3 power on the board towards stacking into a double block later. I eat this now to play around 3 damage to the face. They have like the Heart Fire Duelist that shoots me for 3. Then if I try to do this post-combat, they can respond by shooting me for 3 and killing me. Oh my god. Another Archive Dragon. Big stable here. Big stable. Hitting for 8 in the sky. Can make a food and eat it. It's the only way to live now. No other way is going to stop some flying damage. Unless I attack with Monstrosity and they block with Archive Dragon, but they just won't. Most likely. If I attack with Monstrosity and they don't block with Archive Dragon, we're mega dead. Because then I'm not even threatening to double block and trade into the Hearth Elemental. So it's got to be make a Witch, double block Hearth Elemental and eat a food. Go to 1. But then there's no getting around the double Archive Dragon at this point. There's the Flick a Coin. Still alive, but I have to chump instead of trading now. Now there's no line that survives the dragons. Yeah, I mean, I can jump on the ground, but that is very much game. That is what happens when the more mid-rangey grindier decks stabilize against your aggro. Should have scryed the cut into the bottom. Make sure I could cast the other ones earlier and try to keep the aggressive lead on the game. That's what you gotta do in your aggro decks. So that played out a little poorly, and then Crystal Grotto was a terrible card. This only showed up when it was bad. Not once did Crystal Grotto help do anything with the recruiter. So I think I should have been on 9 Mountain, 7 Swamp. And also with quadruple cut in, it might have also been worth probably playing like a rat out here just for another early creature. Stack up into a little bit more early aggro. I think that's another thing. Speed up the curve a little more. Maybe even put a Tattered Ratter in here. But part of that was to play with the fun, like, 4-mana alchemy thing, which it actually did play pretty well, so maybe it would be, like... Definitely drop Crystal Grotto for a mountain, and then... For the rat out, maybe cut an Edgewall pack at 4 mana. For rat out, and then Tattered Ratter. Another 2-drop. Not sure, maybe 3 cut in is enough. Go 3 cut in there. Because we were clumping up at 4 mana a lot in that last game. And that was part of some of our losing games. I mean, the first 2 games, there was a lot of also just getting bombed out, both figuratively and literally. We got completely Gruff Triplets hosed in our first loss. And our second loss, we died to Goblin Bombardment, so literally bombed out. And yeah, those cards just stacked up really well against us. The triplets, maybe I sort of could have found something going if they didn't have Graveyard Recursion for it as well. But they would have just played the game out differently if they didn't have the Graveyard Recursion, would have been more defensive, grinded it out longer, and still probably won. Triplets is just nuts. Yeah. Don't feel mega bad about the first 2 losses. I think overall we still drafted an excellent deck, played it out fine. Not great. I think I should have scried away our cut-in in that last game. But also, our deck build could have been a little bit better. Maybe something like this to be a little more streamlined, and then just don't worry about training troops with Recruiter. It's not worth the Crystal Grotto. The Crystal Grotto was a big hindrance on our mana in multiple games. In the game that we lost, in the Goblin Bombardment matchup, and in our final loss against the blue-red deck, both of those games, Crystal Grotto cost us a lot of tempo, and you need that aggressive tempo to try to beat your opponents down before they do anything crazy late game, so... Yep, certainly could have been a better 40 going into things, but I think still a really nice deck, and still probably a little better than 4-3 on average. We just hit a couple rough matchups there to drag us down to the lower end of the spectrum for this kind of deck. Never got to play our Gutter Dweller, I think, also. So there were some of our spicy things that we didn't get to do, which is a little sad. But 4-3, still a respectable run. We will take our mid-range prizes, our 1,400 gems, and use those to play another draft very soon. But that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video and you're interested in seeing more like it, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you'd like to catch me live, you can check out the Twitch channel where I'm live every Wednesday. And if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Magic Arena.